Thank you all for coming today and for watching this recording. We're actually recording this after the initial presentation. So thanks for watching our presentation again, if you've seen it twice. If not, here's the recording. Really quickly, I'm Kenny Sisko. I'm the IT director for the College of Engineering, Design, and Computing and the interim IT director for the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. I'm accompanied by my colleagues, Aman Tawalda and John Green, who are actually going to be doing a majority of this presentation. I'm here to kind of give a little bit of context, talk about what we're doing and why, and then I'll hand it over to them. But really quickly, our goal here is basically to target Windows 11 data analytics to kind of understand and prepare our finance teams this year for the replacements that have to happen in order to make sure that we can get everything compliant with Windows 11 by July 31st, which is our target for the campus. As far as kind of how we approached this and what I challenged these two with is how can we take the data coming from OIT, which are these monthly reports that all of these wonderful people have come up with and provided with us, and we have found a way to kind of turn them actionable because a lot of that raw data is a lot to assess. It's a lot to dig into. It's not the most actionable on its own, but it's a fantastic starting point, and it's exactly what we needed. So this presentation is to go over how to take that data, turn it into something actionable, turn it into a way to talk to your finance people, turn it into a way to assess your environment and go from there. So what our goal was, and we started our full project in January, was essentially, can we take this data? Can we turn it into and break it down into computers that are upgraded to Windows 11, computers that can be upgraded to Windows 11, and then computers that can't be? And then trimming that down into something reasonable, focused on what do the finance people need to know, which is breaking it up by department, understanding only the ones that have to be replaced, and then trying to turn that into funding sources, et cetera. So the nice thing is we've given this presentation to our finance folks earlier this week. It went over really well, and the way that these folks did this data analytics made it very easy and very simple for us to do that assessment and kind of come up with that report. So very proud of these two. The work here is fantastic. They're really going to dig into how to do this data analytics, not just the result, but also this is a tutorial of how to do it. So I'm hoping that all of you find this valuable and that this can help you prepare your finance folks. From a timing perspective, this is the best time of year to do this. A lot of finance people are doing their end of year planning for any surplus purchases, for student fees or whatever it may be right now. So in March and April. And then we're also doing finance and budget planning for next fiscal year, which starts July 1st. And with our deadline of July 31st for this, that's kind of really what we're targeting. The main explanation behind the July 31st deadline, by the way, is just to make sure there's a little bit of gap. I think we all know that the end of life date is October 14th, but we want to make sure that there's some gap there between when this is due for the campus and when that is due for Microsoft. So that way we have time to react to unusual circumstances, go through end of fiscal year, or beginning of fiscal year purchasing, acquisition, or procurement, sorry. And then making sure that we're not doing a majority of this work at the start of the fall semester when we're all kind of at our busiest. So these guys did a great job getting this together. Really, really fantastic work. Wanted to give them the opportunity to kind of show it off to you all and then hopefully give you a tutorial so you could do it for yourselves in your departments. Anyway, Aman, John, take it from here.
Thank you, Kenny, for the intro. So my name is Montoya. I'm the IT Operations Manager here at CLAS. So today we're going to be going over who we are and the purpose of this presentation, then jumping straight into data aggregation, trimming, filtering, manual investigations, and the data analysis part that we're going into. If you want to hit the next slide. So as I said, my name is Montoya. I'm the IT Operations Manager. I graduated from CU Denver with my BA in computer science and minor in photography while working as an IT student in engineering. I'm currently finishing my master's in information systems this fall, 2025. I was previously a system administrator and security engineer at the National Snow and Ice Data Center located at CU Boulder, and I came back to CU Denver to help rebuild the CLA's IT infrastructure from the ground up.
Thank you, Aman. A little introduction for me. I'm John Green. I'm the IT Systems Administrator for CU Denver's CLAS department. I graduated from CU Denver with a BA in computer science as well last spring. Previously, I worked in the CDC IT student team, and then I joined the CLS IT team in late August of last year.
And we want to give some background on CLAS IT's current environment and what we were walking into. So CLAS IT has lacked, or CLAS has lacked proper IT for years. Some would say since the beginning of CLAS. I've personally been here for 2 years. John has been here for 1 year. And we're currently working on rebuilding the IT infrastructure from the ground up. So this calls for a completely new support desk, along with our server environment. So assessing, migrating, and retiring our server environment. And in terms of endpoint management, it was completely non-existent. There was nothing here. So no standards set by the previous team, no naming scheme set by the previous team, no oversight onto the endpoints that we had. We're lucky if the machines are even joined to the domain properly. Some of them are not in our view right now. And what we wanted to do with this report and the Windows 11 project in general was create a finance plan for our finance personnel to understand what's going on, how we can attack it, give them solutions, and moving forward, as Kenny mentioned earlier in the presentation. So we had 4 goals in mind, which was one, on-demand reporting, which we are still working on, was once we get a machine over to Windows 11 or once we retire that machine, we want to be able to pull a report that automatically shows when that machine is no longer an issue for us or is no longer on Windows 10. 2 was to identify machines that needed manual investigations. So that calls for trimming the report that OIT and ISS provides us. So seeing machines that have a CPU, the hard cut, so machines that just cannot be upgraded at all and need to be fully replaced, decommission all the ones that we know are no longer here, and broadcast to CLAS departments to dispose of unused machines in general, and identify the different models with Dell and their TPM chips as a whole. 3, with manual investigations, this is where we had to get into the nitty-gritty and see about machines that were unknown and what needed to be upgraded, what didn't need to be upgraded, what could get to Windows 11 and what could not. And then 4, completely scrubbing the report. So having a finalized report that's easy to understand, easy to read, that we can hand off to our finance personnel so we can come in with a strategic solution in mind.
And I'd like to talk real quick about the purpose of this presentation. We really want to give you guys an insight of how we are tackling the Windows upgrade project and what kind of data analytics we've been doing, and try and show you the tools and kind of strategies we've been doing to improve and iterate over time with our work. And we want to give a step-by-step how-to, exactly how we're deriving this information out of the reports everybody's getting, and what kind of value and insight we can get from this for our organization, and what kind of value and insight you guys can get for your organization. Today is a tutorial showing how we import the data from the monthly reports into one report, and you can learn how to understand the data that's coming from there, scrubbing this data into something that's more useful for you and your organization, and trimming it down to the action items that you need out of this report. We want to leverage the data analytics to shrink down the amount of manual investigations we need to do to the smallest number necessary. That's weird.
Oh, jumping straight into the data aggregation. So aggregation of the data provides us a high-level overview of the situation at hand. So it allows us to provide data-driven decisions so we can align IT support with our business goals. So in this case, being Windows 11 upgrades and those coming into our finance personnel. It helps us identify trends such as computers that show up on each report, or maybe they show up on only one report. That can be for a multitude of reasons of maybe they are being cleaned up by tidyad from Active Directory, so they're no longer on the domain or anything like that. And really it simplifies the reporting to allow us to get a meaningful data analysis onto what's going on in the environments. So to start, you would want to get your access to raw data from OIT. So MoDuffy provides these to us every single month, and they come into a folder that should be your college. For us on the left-hand side, it's CLAS, College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And inside that folder are all the different reports for the different months. So from October 2024 to the newest one as of today, 3/13/2025, February 2025, you will be able to access this data. So for me personally, we put this into our Teams channel so we can actually have this accessible through the File Explorer. And inside each report, you will have different files. So you'll have them as your department name, -all, or already Windows 11, capable of Windows 11, not capable of Windows 11, or unknown. For the data aggregation, we are going to be using the department-all file because this has all the information that we need, and we'll be filtering it down more as this presentation goes on. So we want to prep the data for aggregation. So in this step, we want to take the all file and rename it to the first. So number one dash October 24 dash CLAS. And we want to do this sequentially for all of the files in from October 2024 to February 2025 and the new ones as well. So the reason we want to do this is for a future step where we are going to aggregate and remove duplicates of the data. And we want to be able to filter down from the newest data coming from February 2025 down to the oldest data of October 2024. So from here, we want to take all those aggregated reports, rename them. So on the right-hand side, you'll see there 1 October 2024, 2 November 2024, 3 December 2024, and so on and so forth, and put them in a new folder called aggregated reports or anything you would like to rename it. From here, you want to create a new Excel spreadsheet outside of the new folder you just created. So here I have a presentation Excel spreadsheet that's outside of the aggregated reports. And in your new Excel spreadsheet, you want to go to data from file from folder. This way you can actually pull the data from the Excel spreadsheets in the aggregated folder. And you want to select the new folder you created, in this case, aggregated reports. So this will bring in all the data from those different files that we just renamed. And you want to click on the combine dropdown and click combined and load. From here, there's a couple of steps to do. So for the sample file, I recommend selecting the newest file that you have from OIT and ISS, that being for us February 2025. This includes some new data. I believe the last login has been added to February 2025 and January 2025, I believe. So we want that data to continue to move with us. And so we understand who is the end user that we need to contact, maybe later for manual investigations. So afterwards, on the display options, you want to click CLAS-all for the table, and then click OK. After that, the data will be imported into a new table in the Excel spreadsheet. You want to go to the first column of column A, source.name, click on the filter option, and you want to sort this by sort Z to A. So this will make it so the newest file, which starts with the 5, will immediately come up at the first populations, and so on and so forth. It'll go downwards. And as you can see, the data has been sorted. So February 2025 is the first one, and then afterwards will be January 2024, or 2025, sorry, December 2024, November 2024, October 2024. And now we want to remove the duplicates from all these since they will be showing up in the multiple reports. So clicking on the table, you want to click on Data and go to Remove Duplicates. From here, a new pop-up will show up. All of the columns will be selected, and I would recommend to unselect all the columns, select only the device name, and press OK. What this will do is that it will look for duplicates within that single column of the device name, which we know there will be duplicates, and we'll remove them. So in our case, we had 1,669 duplicates found and 563 remaining values. And after that, your data has been aggregated. So now you are left with the most recent data in your report. So summarizing everything that we did here, we took all of our monthly reports from October 2024 to February 2025 and aggregated them into one report. We sorted that aggregation from descending orders, so Z to A, and made sure the newest report showed up first and removed duplicate device names, leaving the most current information for each device. With that, we're left with an aggregated report that we can have a high-level overview of the current situation and allows us to extrapolate more information from.
Great. Now I'll start with the trim intro. Now that we've aggregated the data, we can trim the data so that we only have the relevant information we need and utilize Excel tools to visualize it. We really want to focus our attention on the most important data points and remove anything that's irrelevant or redundant. Something I want to stress is that no one size fits all. What works for us might not work for your department, but if you understand why we're doing what we're doing, it'll help you out and figure out what's best for you. I'd like to really quickly go over what the checks mean in all those columns you'll see. We'll do a quick overview of each of them. For the first one, RAM check failed. Windows 11 requires a minimum of 4 gigabytes of RAM. Storage check failed. Windows requires a minimum of 64 gigabytes of storage. processor core count check failed, there needs to be a minimum of 2 cores. Processor speed check failed, you need a minimum of 1 gigahertz clock speed. The TPM check failed one is interesting. So that means TPM 2.0 has not been detected. This doesn't mean it doesn't have TPM 2.0 on the hardware. It means Windows doesn't see it. If it's turned off in the BIOS settings, Windows will not be able to recognize it exists. If you have an object that has TPM 2.0 check failing, you may need to manually investigate this one and see if it can have it on, or if you just need to switch an option on for it. Similarly, secure boot check failed says secure boot is disabled. Most modern devices, even quite old ones, will have secure boot, and this may be something you have to manually investigate for that object if it's off. Processor family check failed. That means the processor family is not supported by Windows 11. For Intel, anything 7th generation Intel or below is no longer supported by Windows 11. AMD processors, I don't know off the top of my head, but you can look that up as well. Processor 64-bit check failed. This means the processor is not using 64-bit architecture. We don't have any of those machines in our organization, but that doesn't mean you guys don't have any 32-bit machines in your organization. And then OS check failed means that the current OS is not compatible with an in-place upgrade. This means that what is installed on the machine can't be upgraded to Windows 11. This doesn't mean the machine can't be upgraded to Windows 11. It just means that the current operating system can't jump straight to 11 from there. The upgrade eligibility column you might see will have a bunch of numbers in it, and I want to give you a quick overview of what each of them mean. They range from 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can see the key here where 0 means a device has already been upgraded to Windows 11. 1 means the device is unknown, it might not be online, has issues with communicating with the network, something is missing in its the detection when it comes to the report. 2 means the device is not capable of upgrading. Then we'll show you where the checks are failed. And then 3 means the device is capable of upgrading to Windows 11. As you can see here in our before report, we have a bunch of columns here. And a lot of these are going to go away because if you look in the RAM check failed column, they're all false, which means none of these machines have failed to have, none of these machines are below the minimum requirements of RAM for Windows 11. You can identify these unneeded columns by looking into the filter options and seeing there's only one option. If there's only false, there's no true values. So that data column might not be very useful for you. And that's what we decided to remove those kinds of columns. And you can see afterwards, we trimmed down to only really 3 checks we care about, whether TPM has failed or passed, whether secure boot has failed or passed, and if the processor family has failed or passed. We also changed it from true false to pass check / failed check because that made a little bit more syntactical sense to us. You can change it to whatever you want, but that's what made sense to us. A little quick summary. We wanted to understand the meaning of every check in this report. You've got to determine what checks are necessary for your specific organization and remove those that aren't really needed. Then edit the column information to fit your needs. Does the default data make sense to you? Adjust the syntax if it doesn't.
After we trim the data, we're heading into filtering. So filtering really shows that only the relevant data is being considered, reducing the amount of noise and unneeded information, especially when looking at certain departments or use cases. So for example, in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, we have 23 departments across the entire college, and we need to be able to filter down to a specific department to understand what their use case is and what's happening in their current environment. This also helps us identify trends and patterns, allowing us to further communicate the meaningful insight into the current situation for Windows 11s for each department and each organization. So when you're clicking on a table, you want to go to Table Design and insert a slicer. So a slicer is a visual way of filtering the data. So it makes it a little bit easier to actually filter down to what you are looking for specifically, rather than clicking on each tab and going down and clicking on one of the selections there. Slicers make this significantly easier, and you can use them for tables and pivot tables, which we'll be going into in a couple of slides. So once you click on Insert Slicer, you will be given a choice of picking which column you would like to insert the slicer for. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the actual slicers. So here I have upgrade eligibility, TPM check, processor family check, secure boot check, and the organizational unit. And on the right-hand side, you can see that once you click on one of the filters, it filters the other slicers as well to show you what's available to be selected and what's not available to be selected. So for example, in the slide, I wanted to check what machine is not capable of Windows 11, that has passed the TPM check, that has failed the processor family, and that has failed the secure boot check. So out of all 563 devices that we have in our list, there's only one machine that filters into this specific slicer configuration and shows exactly what we are needing to see here in the dean's office. In this example, I wanted to check for windows that are not compatible with Windows 11, that passed the TPM check, that passed the processor family check, that passed the secure boot check, and that's specifically in the English department. So again, out of these 563 devices, this is what's being shown to me in this filter, so I can quickly filter down to what is being looked at in that scenario. So from here, we can also add a pivot table. So a pivot table is a way to actually represent the data in a more summarized, meaningful way to understand what the numbers are looking like and show you quickly of how many devices need to be upgraded or different use cases like that. So from here, click on the table and go to Insert, Pivot Table, and then it will select the table range, which in this case is CLAS All Reports. And then you want to make sure that it's selecting a new worksheet and then click OK. From here, you'll get a new empty pivot table that you can add filters, columns, rows, and values, and to break down what those means. Filters focuses on specific data that you are looking at. So in this case, we're looking at OUs, organizational units. Columns filters the data, organizes the data actually in vertically. Rows organize the data horizontally, and values summarize the data in a numerical format. So in this example, I have it set to the filter that I want to see is organizational unit, the rows being upgrade eligibility, and the values being a count of each device name. And on the left-hand side, you can see that capable of Windows 11, I have 130 devices. Not capable of Windows 11, I have 74 devices. Unknown investigation needed is 4 devices, and upgraded already Windows 11 is 317, equaling that grand total of 525. So I can quickly see from this pivot table what's going on and have a high-level overview of what's happening. And you can also combine these and add slicers and pivot tables together so you can actually see what's going on at organizational units and in different departments. So from here, you would click on the pivot table, go to Pivot Table Analyze, Insert Slicer, and insert the slicer that you're actually looking for, whether that be the organizational unit, the upgrade eligibility, anything like that. And you can see from here, with the slicer and the pivot table working together, I can go down to different departments and see what needs to be upgraded and what doesn't. So in this example, I went to CLAS IT, our department, and see that we have one machine that's upgraded to Windows 11 and already done. So to summarize what we just did here, we added slicers to the table to have a user-friendly way of filtering the data. And so we can see specific use cases and scenarios, whether it be departments or whether it be upgrade eligibility. We added pivot tables to summarize our data set to an easy to read context rather than just a large amount of rows and not understanding what everything means and having to highlight and see what everything is. We can just see everything in a clear, high level way of understanding it. And then we combine slicers and pivot tables to filter down to only relevant data to see what is being looked for given our scenario. So in the previous example of seeing, I want to see what's being upgraded in English department or what's being upgraded in CLAS IT departments.
Now we can start talking about the manual investigation. Now that we've trimmed and filtered our reports, we have actually some useful data to figure out which devices need to be manually investigated. These are devices that are missing information such as model name or devices that have been marked as ineligible to upgrade despite passing all their checks. We may need to research the model to check its compatibility with Windows 11. We may need to reach out to the primary user of that device or physically touch the machine to see what's going on. To quickly see how we were doing manual investigations, we were checking and seeing stuff like, here, it's missing the model, but it's passed the checks. This is unknown and investigation is required for these 2 devices. So now I wanted to research the user, but we thankfully, thanks to Mo, we have the last logged in column that has been added to the reports, but sometimes it won't be there. Their contact info won't be there. You won't have their username. So you're going to have to find it yourself. If you have access to Entra, you can go and find their contact info through their Entra device, which I'll show you how to do that here in the next few slides. You enter Entra at entra.microsoft.com and log in with your university credentials. You can go to all devices under devices. You can search a device object name and then click on the device in Entra. And it'll give you an overview of the properties, including the user principal name. Now, this might not be the person who's currently using the laptop or computer. This is the person who I believe first logged in to the computer when it was domain joined, but it will give you a starting point. So you can contact them and say, hey, I'm researching this model. We are trying to do our Windows upgrade reports and stuff. Can you help me figure out who's using this? Are you using this or is somebody else using this? It's a very useful tool. We also can research the model, especially if it's a Dell computer. You can simply Google your model name and supported operating systems, and Dell will have a page that says, hey, your Optiplex 7400 supports all these operating systems, including Windows 11. So you know it is capable. If it doesn't have Windows 11 on there, you won't be able to find it. It'll just say Windows 10 or it won't have Windows 11. So that means it's not capable of upgrading. If it's not a Dell, which in our case with a lot of different models in our departments, you will have to physically look up the model or find the model and manually check the specs of it, see if it's capable with the processor and TPM. Finally, once you've determined whether a device can or cannot be upgraded, we can edit our upgrade eligibility column to investigate and to reflect this. And ideally, once we finished our investigation, there should be no unknown devices or as minimum as possible. It could take a lot of time to do this, or it could be fairly short, depending on how many unknowns you have when you start. Quick summary of this section. We determine what devices need to be manually investigated. Are they missing info? Are they passing checks but still being marked as ineligible? If the user information is missing, we can utilize Entra to find out who the primary user for the computer was. We also can research model information to check whether the model is capable of upgrading to Windows 11.
After doing the manual investigations, we've already learned a lot from the data that we've seen. We've seen what machines can be upgraded, what machines can't be upgraded, and we've figured out our unknowns. But we can also do more. So with data analysis, we can identify the cost per machine per department by correlating the unupgradable devices to ISS OIT's Dell standard configurations, which can be found in CU Marketplace, and using this as a rough cost estimate to help our finance personnel make data-driven decisions. So this is what we did within CLAS. I'm sorry, keep going over it. This is what we did within CLAS to understand how much it's going to cost per department. So heading into this, we created a new column in the table and called it estimated computer replacement cost. And we turned this into an accounting type, so it would show up in currency values. Afterwards, just like the manual investigation, we went through each model of the machine and gave it a rough estimate using the Dell standard configurations to compare, this is what this machine might cost if we were to place it outright with one of the standard configurations. So in this case, for an Optiplex 7050, we estimated it would take around $1,075 to replace it for each of that model. And then going down into the Precision 5720 all-in-ones on the Dell configuration, that costs about $962. And this is how we can go through and get a bit of a rougher estimate of what's it going to cost for each department and how we can extrapolate data from this. So here, we would insert a new pivot table and use OUs as rows and estimated cost as values. This gives us a overview of how much it's going to cost per department. And from here, we can actually turn the sum of estimated computer costs into an accounting format, so we can see this in currency. So as you can see in this, this is one of our older reports. After our manual investigations, it looks like we were going to have $79,832 across the entirety of all of our departments, with one department specifically being $49,000. But we can even do more. So to visualize this data, we can go to Insert, Recommended Charts, and then we can select a chart that made sense for us. So in this case, I'm using a bar chart. and can insert it into next to the pivot table. And from here, we can have a visual representation of what's going on, along with adding a slicer, as we did in our previous sections, to filter down to what's capable of Windows 11, what's not capable of Windows 11, and how much that is going to cost to replace. So here we can see that on the left-hand side in the pivot table, how much it's going to cost per department. And then a visual representation seeing that one of our departments is way farther than the others in terms of what needs to be replaced, and then using a slicer to filter down even more so. And so this was our final results that we ended up using to our report to our finance personnel. So on the left-hand side, we have the sum of estimated costs, and this is our most updated report after doing more in manual investigations, and found that in total, we have $96,017 worth of replacements across the entirety of CLAS. And in the middle, we are able to use two slicers, so we can organize it by our organizational unit. And then in the middle, a pie chart to represent the visually of the one department that's going to cost the most at $48,803. And then along with the upgrade eligibility of can it be upgraded and can it not be upgraded. Along with this, we also added the Dell standard configurations, so folks can know from our finance department where we are pulling these numbers from. So this was able to give us a really high level overview of what's going on in each department and helps us communicate it better to them for data-driven decisions. So to summarize what we just went over, we added a new column called estimated cost and turned it into an accounting type. We compared the upgradable machines to OIT ISS Dell standard configurations in CU Marketplace to determine that rough cost estimate it would take to replace each computer. Afterwards, we created a pivot table using OUs as rows and estimated costs as values to show the estimated cost per department. Afterwards, we added a table and slicers to visualize the data, making it easier to understand from a high-level perspective. So that way we can go in to that sheet, filter down to what we're looking for, and see how much it's going to cost per department, per machine.
Do a quick summary of everything we did today. First of all, we aggregated the data. So we aggregated all our reports, in our case, from October to February of last year, October to this year. And we sorted them to keep our current data and remove duplicates and created a high-level overview for deeper insights. We trimmed our reports down. We reviewed the reports checks, kept the ones we only found necessary, and customized the information to ensure clarity for our organization. We filtered using slicers and pivot tables to make it more user-friendly and summarizing the data into an easy-to-read context. We refined these results for specific use cases and scenarios. We then manually investigated, identifying devices that required this, and using Entra to find primary users for missing data, and researching model specifications to determine Windows 11 upgrade eligibility. We finally did data analysis. We added an estimated cost column, compared the unupgradable machines to standard configurations, and created a cost by department pivot table. Then we used slicers for clearer visualization.
So we would like to talk about how this really impacted CLAS. So we're in a much better position after having this information on hand. And as Kenny said, we had our meeting with our finance personnel, and it went amazingly. So they weren't surprised that anything that came in, we weren't hitting them at the final second of, hey, we need $90,000 out of nowhere. We were able to come in with solutions on hand and working with them moving forward to get this project to a finish point so we can be ready by that July 31st timeframe. What we're still working on is pulling real-time reports through SCCM and Intune to help IT admins with tracking their efforts and upgrading Windows 11, so that on-demand reporting, so we can understand once a machine has been upgraded, can we take out the report immediately and go from there? And what this didn't help us with was computers that are out of our site, so that are not joined to the domain. And we're taking these by case with our end users once we find them, since, as we said previously within CLAS, historically there has been no IT support, so people were running wild in the Wild West of just buying a machine and then handing it to their end user and not being joined to the domain. We have no visuals onto those, so we're taking it case by case. And we also want to give a big thank you to ISS and OIT for providing these reports to us to extrapolate data from. It was immensely helpful and got us into the position we are here today. And if anyone has any questions, please send them to the ISS Endpoint Management.
One thing while we're still recording, we did have a couple questions during the live session, and I wanted to kind of hit a couple of those really quickly. So that way, if other folks have the same type of question, they know what to do. So, one of those questions was, where can I get these reports from OIT, ISS? For the most part, we've cultivated those contacts already. However, we found a couple gaps that we didn't know about. So if you are one of those people that are supposed to be getting these reports, please send an email to this group. We'll investigate that, figure out which department you're in, figure out who those contacts were, talk to you, and include them, and make sure that we've got that all cleaned up. There are reports going all the way back to October, so there's plenty of data. And if you end up, starting that now, just now seeing it, it's not like you're only going to get March's data or whatever, or whenever you watch this recording, you'd be able to go retroactively and see all of that as that access is given. So, how often are these sent out? Once a month. At least for now. I know that we're working on other ways to kind of like make that a little bit more on demand for folks, but we haven't had a lot of success there yet. So once a month is kind of what we've been able to maintain at the moment. I think that's what it's going to be for the norm. But as kind of endpoint standards kind of, evolve, and as we start getting a lot more mature in endpoint management, we're going to encourage folks to kind of figure out reporting schemes that work for them on all kinds of different things, not just Windows 11 capabilities, but also, encryption status or other things like that. So it's really good to get familiar with these reporting tools and kind of like hone those data analytics skills. And this is just kind of the entry level starting point for that. And then the next one is, will we get a how-to for today's meeting sent out? Hopefully this is that. And our goal is to get that to you as soon as possible. But one thing I wanted to take a moment to plug was we are working on putting together a knowledge base for all of this. And hopefully we'll have that sometime in April and make sure that you all have access to that. There was one other question that I had for you all, and that was talking about when we see machines that do not have Windows 11 upgraded, or I'm sorry, that do not have the hardware for Windows 11, but already have Windows 11 installed. And that's a case that we've talked about a bit in the last few months, where Microsoft has kind of gone back and forth about whether you're allowed to install Windows 11 on older devices. The answer is yes, you can, but Microsoft's stance on it is, but you won't get updates anymore. So, John and Aman, I wanted to ask, how are you all handling that with this reporting scheme? Because clearly it'll show up as already installed with Windows 11, but then it might fail a couple of those other columns. Can you talk about that briefly?
Over, John?
Uh, sure. For the most part, we're taking it case by case. As you said, Microsoft is not supporting these devices officially. Even Dell, I believe, has said that any device that is not supported for Windows 11, like on my previous slide, where it showed the page for the computer, they won't support with drivers either. These are devices that are going to be in the manual investigation column. Anything that is failing checks but is already upgraded to Windows 11 needs to go into a manual investigation, and you're probably going to have to reach out to the user and see what's going on with that computer. Do you have anything more to add, Amon, about that?
Yeah, and I would add what we did too was because we noticed, say, like an OptiFlex 7040 or anything like that, that some of them were already upgraded to Windows 11, whether the case be we did that before Windows 11 upgrades were happening or anything like that. We are considering all those models still needing to be upgraded because of the lack of TPM 2.0 and the lack of updates that they will be receiving. So while you're doing your manual investigations, if you're starting to notice, and this is where noticing those trends and historical data comes into play of, hey, we have a bunch of OptiFlex 7040s that are failing to check, but some of them are already upgraded and passing. I would consider those as they have all failed to check. They have all failed and cannot get up to Windows 11 because it is no longer safe to keep them around.
Yeah, I think that's really important to highlight from a cybersecurity perspective is compliance from a cybersecurity perspective doesn't come down to does it have Windows 11. The compliance check is, does it have a supported operating system, right? And at this point, Windows 10 and prior versions will not be supported anymore. But even if you have Windows 11 but on older hardware, that's not supported anymore, which is why it's not getting updates. So we're basically saying you have to replace those still. So from a data analytics perspective, Aman and John, thank you for taking that approach. One other question that we had, and this came from Tyler while we were, in person for this one, which was basically, are you all using this data to then have conversations with your finance folks about proper life cycles? In our case, the answer to that is no. That doesn't mean that this doesn't open the door to that. I think there are a lot of other places or a lot of other departments that are a little bit more ready for that kind of conversation. CLAS isn't quite there yet. That's because we're just now starting to wrap our arms around the fact that we even have an environment that needs to be managed. So this is where we're just starting to kind of build those relationships with finance departments and letting people know that we're here to help and that we want to help solution these types of things instead of just kind of leave them stranded. One thing that we've been able to do with this one is really show kind of the value of what we can bring forward to the table here and also proactively taking these stances and helping people before it's an emergency or a crisis. Like, for example, come October 14th, should all these devices suddenly be removed from the network and not be able to connect to the campus anymore, it's not a crisis because we jumped ahead of it. We let people know ahead of time. We were able to manage that beforehand. And then from a finance perspective, able to do that predictive analytics, help do those replacements beforehand instead of having to find all of this money last minute when it's impacting operations, right? So we're working on building those relationships. This is really kind of bringing forward the fact that IT can kind of be that facilitator of those conversations and be that enabler of connecting finance with end users and making sure that we're kind of proactively taking these approaches and kind of showing the value of working with us on those types of things collaboratively. So we're taking it from that service approach, but also from that partnership approach with our other organizational units outside of IT. And I do think this is going to open the door for things like lifecycle conversations in the future and better management practices over time, and hopefully more efficiency practices. Because we're definitely in a situation in our college where we desperately need that. So that was kind of the answer to that question. I think that's all the questions we got during the live session. Were there any others that anybody remembers?
I don't think there were any others, but I really do want to reiterate that everyone who has access to this video is not going to have access to these reports. And that is by design to maintain confidentiality for reporting. So if you watch this video, if you attended the live session and have no idea what we're talking about, there's still obviously a lot of good information here to learn and apply. But we are working with specific IT partners for the Windows 11 upgrades. As Kenny mentioned earlier, if you are the only IT person for your department and have not seen any of these reports, please reach out to the email address on the screen, and we will work with you to make sure that we get you what you need so that you feel supported. But then some of you, this may not be something that you need to worry about. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to ISS Endpoint Management. And that also includes, for sure, don't panic about anything. We are here to help and support you through this. Just reach out, communicate with us, and we will absolutely partner and work with you through whatever obstacles might be coming up. I think that's it for the rest of us. Thank you so much, John and Aman. And this is incredible, incredible work. You guys are the dream team. This is everything we hoped people would use these reports to do with them. So wonderful. Thank you so much.